All right, then let's continue. We can see my screen, right? Okay, so I'm going to bring in what we did in the previous classes. Let me say scripts, the did. Let's see. Let's just write each one. RPS. RPS stands for rock, paper, scissors. And then what's the last thing we have not done in this HTML file? Let's see if we have been paying attention. What's the one thing we are yet to do? Because if I were to write console.log RPS, we will not find it in the console. Why?
It has not been linked to a JavaScript file.
The HTML has not been linked to the JavaScript file. Thank you very much. So we're going to add a source and then say in script.js. All right. So we will find it in the console immediately. Now I want to go and bring in our rock paper scissors from lesson I think 3. Let me check quickly and just bring it in. Um, let's see lesson 3 and open this. Okay, that's not it. Let's check lesson 4. I need the rock paper scissors, not this one too. Let's check. Hey, can someone remind me when we did that? When we did the rock paper scissors, I need the actual code from there. Let's check. Lesson 3B, script that here, not 3. Oh, we did that on the phone, I think. Yes, we did it on the phone. So it should probably be in lesson 4. Lesson 4 for itself. Yep, I found it. So I'm going to copy everything here and paste it in here. So remember in lesson 4, when we did functions, we're going to turn this into a function-based game. It's going to use functions. Look at this, there's a lot of code there. I can try explaining. This is where we get the username. This is where we get the player name. And then, give me a second. Okay, sorry about that. So then we have answer. It just says let's answer, which means at that point it is undefined. That's nothing in it. And then here we are logging the player's name to the console. We are checking. We are checking if the player exists here. That's the player name. The prompt in which the spaces at the front and behind. Now here we're sanitizing the input, validating. I mean validation of the user input. We're checking if it is not equal to rock, and at the same time it's not equal to paper, and at the same time it's not equal to scissors. So you just say you did not enter a valid answer. That's what we will say in the console. Now at this point, this is an else. After everything here, at this point we have realized that the user has not picked. The user has picked rock, paper, or scissors, and then we generate a random number between 1 and 3. This is the line to generate that. So we check if the random number is 1, then computer choice will be rock. If the random number is 2, computer choice will be paper, and then else computer choice will be scissors. And we know that the only option is 3. The only other option after 1 and 2. Now, this is a variable called result. This result is check. We just say computer chose whatever the computer chose, and then to say username, that's the name the user has entered, chose answer. Answer is this sanitized input, this value, sanitized input, yes, after formatting to lowercase and then trimming it. So it will only have rock, paper, or scissors at this point. Now we are checking if the player and computer chose the same thing, it's a rock. And then else, if the computer chose scissors and the player has chosen rock, the player wins. Or this, the player wins. Or this, then the player wins. Then else, computer wins. We're appending that to the variable result. We're just adding this. We're adding the two strings together. When you pick one variable and then say plus equal to, this is what it does. Let me comment this line out and say result equal to result plus, then we just bring this in. That, and then this and this are the exact same thing. So I'm going to comment it out and leave this there. So instead of writing results twice, you can just say result plus equals and then write that there. Now, here we alert the result, ask if they want to play again, then reload. If they don't want to play again, we say a message and tell them, okay, enjoy playing. Now, this is something you should have understood before, and that was just a simple recap. The recap was not for someone who does not understand what we have been doing. It's for someone who understands it and just for you to understand it more. Now, let me create a new one and name it rps.js. rps.js will have everything and then just paste it here. Yeah, I'll just write RPS inside of it. RPS. So RPS is just a place we're using to jokes. We're not using it. And this is a fresh start. So I'm going to remove all of those and then reload. Which is not supposed to show anything. Yeah, let's reload. Okay, now console.log chapter 6. Now we'll keep looking at RPS, JS, and be copying what is inside and use it in another place. The first thing we want to do here is define a function that takes everything here, a function that takes what the user's name is. So I'm just going to bring this. I'll copy it. There are some things we would change, but let's just go on. So I'm going to say function get username equal to get username will be equal to that thing we copied. So I will save and then we check out something. I don't know, it says there's an issue somewhere. Okay, I'm not supposed to add that arrow. I'm supposed to add just this. I was writing an arrow function. So please understand the difference between a regular function and an arrow function. This is how you define a regular function. Now, this is a line that takes the username in form of a prompt. If the user does not enter anything, it will default to player. And then here we are checking what the player wants to take, the player choice, which will return a prompt, which will be either rock, paper, or scissors. Now, this should probably not be here. Now, we said let's answer. We're going to have to remove everything here. And this is just going to return this prompt. Return the prompt. That's what the first function does. Now, the next thing we want to do is still continue using the other stuff. Remember, we have only copied the first line. I've only copied the first line that asks what the name is, and then it returns the value of the name. The second one would do everything here, which would be get player's name, get player choice. So I'm going to say function get player choice. So I'm going to paste that, and then we have a prompt: rock, paper, or scissors. We define a variable named answer. I don't want to log anything to the console again. And then if if this exists, this variable, that means if the player has entered something, we do all of this. We'll format the input. We'll format the input and give it to the variable answer. Yes, this is the variable answer. So we reassign that to it. And then we know that if, okay, let's just return answer. Remember, function should return something. That's the value of the function when you call it. The value of a function when you call it is what it is returning. I'm going to save that and then continue. This is to get the player choice. So we are getting somewhere and a few things will change. Now, everything inside of here is validating the input. Okay. Yes. So let's copy everything here. If you have a question, you can unmute your mic and ask. Yes. So I'm going to
Okay,
copy
so please,
this.
I have one question.
All right.
You said function you have to make use of return for it to return the value. Um, isn't it after we are done with creating that function, then we can call that function? If you call that function without return, is it not going to carry out the task that you have given to that function?
A function always carries out its task, whether it has a return or not. What I said earlier does not mean that a function should always have a return. It's not mandatory. But when you call a function and assign the function to a variable, the function is going to assign the value of your return to that variable in which you are attaching it to. So if a function is just to carry out a task and there's no need to return anything, fine, you can decide not to return anything.
Okay, if I get it correctly, you are saying that if I'm working with variables, that in if my function contains a set of variables and I want to make use of that variables when I call the function, I will have to use return. But if it's not that case, I don't have to use return. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean.
All right, thank you.
But in this case, those variables inside of the function, they are very much needed. That's why we are returning them. Another way you can do this is define another variable in the global scope. That means outside any function. And then you keep reassigning those variables inside of the function you are creating. And that's a very tedious process. You could just return the value if you need those values. So I will continue. If anyone else has a question, please go ahead and ask your question. So here, this function returns the answer of the player. So we know that we have gotten the player choice at this point. and I've also gotten the username. We're halfway there. So next thing we want to do is sanitize the player's input, which should still be inside of here. So if answer is not equal to this or equal to this or equal to that, we'll return an alert. Now this is called an early return. When you write return before something, it means it will perform that task. Hey, sorry, it will perform that task and then stop the function immediately. That is what an early return is for. So I could write the alert and then write the return at the bottom, but it is easier to just write it on one line and just say return alert. So it's going to return an alert, then stop the function. When you use return early inside of a function, it returns and stops the function. So it does not get to this point of the function. I hope what I explained is clear. Okay, moving on.
Can you come
Okay,
again?
all right, I'll do that. When you write a return inside of a function, probably before the end or somewhere where you don't want anything to continue, because at this point the user has not entered rock or paper or scissors. What we want to do at this point is return and stop the function. So when you write a return before the end of a function, this stops the function from executing further commands. At this very point, this return would only work if the player has not entered a correct choice. I hope that was clear.
Okay, you said the first return will only work if the player have not entered a correct choice. If the player has entered a correct choice, will the second return work?
Yes, yes. This second return is in the outer scope. This would always run except you have an issue like an early return. An early return disregards every other thing after it. Normally, if the player entered rock at this point, it's going to trim it here. Let's say there are spaces or it is in capital letter. It will trim it and turn everything to small letters. And now at that point, your answer should be equal to one of these. And at this point, it is equal to this. And we're saying if it is not equal to, that's when we are running this alert, this return. So if you enter the correct choice, it would skip this block because condition, this condition in the middle here is not satisfied. So it moves here and then just returns your answer.
All
This
right.
only happens if you do not enter the correct answer.
Okay, but if this is a standard if block, why was the else statement not required?
Now, in this type of case, an else statement is not necessary. You can write an else and continue. But in this case, it's just like if this is not um if this is not satisfied, move on to the next part. If you add an else and then we have other things to check later, it will make your code very bulky and you're going to have something called um a callback L. Yeah, they call it L because it's usually very, very long. You're going to have a lot of indents and the beginning of your code could shift onto something like this. We usually have a lot of early returns in different parts of code, especially the backend. So instead of you nesting and nesting else, because you have to write a lot of else inside of each other, we just do an early return and then continue because we know that it would never get to this point if this is not satisfied.
Okay. I also noticed you have two if block statements, and is it because of same reason you did not do else if, you just went straight to creating a new if statement?
Now, these two if statements are very different statements. They do two different tasks. If we add an else, We are disregarding the fact that two of them have to run. If you want two if statements to run, you do them differently. If you add an else, only one of them would run.
All right, that's clear. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So the next one, I think we're supposed to determine the winner at this point. Now this is where we have to use our parameters to the fullest. Here at this point, we have seen that the user has entered the correct answer. We will just copy everything here. Yeah, that's long. Okay. All right. So we'll say the function determine winner. Sorry, I keep adding an equal to. If you want to write this as an arrow function, you write it like this: equal to. You don't write function, you write const. Const determine winner equal to brackets, arrow, and then curly braces. So I'm going to rewind and leave it as a regular function. All right. So yeah, I'm just going to paste, and we should check everything because we might have errors. All right. So let's see. We have seen that the user has picked rock, papers, or scissors. We get a random number. We check the computer choice. No, we define the computer choice. Now, when you see something like let computer choice, this means it is undefined. This is the same thing as saying let computer choice equal to undefined. But when you're coding, you should learn some shortcuts. They are very important. So if random number equal to 1, we do this. This commented code is how we um, define computer choice. So I could remove everything here and then bring this one back. So this is computer choice defined with a ternary statement. I already explained this if statement before. So let me explain this. This one does not use let like this one. It uses const. It says const random number equal to. Now this is a ternary statement. The ternary statement is going to return one of these three. The first part says random number equal to 1, return rock. Random number equal to 2, return paper. Else, return scissors. So computer choice will be equal to one of those three at this point, and then we define a result that shows what both parties have chosen. And then here we we check if both of them have chosen the same thing. If the answer equal to the computer choice, then it's a tie. Else, then we check combinations that might make the player win. Then we said player wins. Remember how I explained how we can add this? I even wrote it here. And then else the computer wins. Let me explain this again. So here we are checking. Have they chosen the same thing? Then it's a tie. This is a couple of combinations with added or here that would make the player win. So we say player wins. Then we have seen two possibilities out of three. We do not need to write the third possibility again. If you want to write the third possibility, you just write the opposite of this. Change this to rock and then this to no, this to rock and then this to scissors. You are going to have to keep interchanging them like that. But instead of that, just write an else. The computer wins. Now, at this point, we have defined result, and result has three components: computer chose, and then username chose, and then whoever wins, or whether it's a tie. So it will show three things, and we're adding this for backward slash and n. This is called a second line character, next line character, sorry. it makes it jump to the next line, and then we just send an alert that shows the result. That's simply it. Now we have defined different components. Let's define one more, and then we can bring everything together. The next thing we want to do here is define a function called play again. Play again. This function will take the value.
Please, is the
So we
class
have
being
just been
recorded?
saying, "Come play again." What did you say?
I'm asking if the class is being recorded.
Yes, it is. I mean, I hope so. It is. Okay, so we're going to say come play again equal to. I want to use an arrow function here so that I can learn how to use that. So we're going to ask, um, confirm. Okay. Would you like to play again? So remember, a confirm would return true or false. Let's make this a one-liner. You don't need the curly braces if you're only writing one line of code. Now this function returns either true or false. Now this would be important later on. I'll show you why. So let's continue. We're going to define a function named play game. So let's just say function play game, and then the first thing we want to do is define the player's name, right? And this function returns it. So we just say const username equal to. Oh my god, we have made a mistake somewhere. This function does not have access to the computer choice or the answer. Do you get what I mean? This function has no access to computer choice, username, or answer because they are all inside of these three functions. Now we're going to bring them in as parameters. So we're going to add computer choice. Hey, sorry, computer choice, comma. Okay, let's add the answer first. Remember, answer is the player's choice. Computer choice, answer, and then username in that particular order. So let's go to the bottom. So username will be equal to get username, and then player choice, or we can just name it answer. Let me name it player choice so that I can show a particular thing later. So player choice will be get player choice. Now I've gotten two things. Let's see the next one. I've gotten the player choice. The next thing we want to get is determine the winner. That was very fast. So we'll say there are some things that need to be checked first. Let's just determine winner first. And then after we start playing, we'll know what's winning. So the first thing it takes is the computer choice. So I'm going to add computer choice. Next thing it takes is answer. And we know the answer is the player choice. So we just add player choice in. And then the last thing it takes is the username. Okay, it does not need computer choice. Computer choice was defined inside of it right here. So we're removing that parameter that says computer choice. Now, there are some things we want to ensure is correct. At this point, username definitely exists. But if player choice does not exist, we have to do something. If, let's say, there's no player choice, if there is no player choice, we return if the user wants to play again. Okay, let's just say const const replay equal to play again. We'll call the function play again, and this will return a boolean true or false. Now this is a very very important class. I need us to listen very very carefully. This part, this part plays the entire game again from the start. So we just say return play game. Now you are wondering, the name of this function is play game, but inside the function is also calling play game. Well, what is important to know here is that play game calling himself here, this process is called recursion, and recursion should be used carefully. It should only be used inside with a particular um, condition. That means maybe inside of an if statement or a ternary statement. If a function keeps calling himself, it will lead to an endless loop. A loop is when something keeps happening over and over again. So you have to have something, a particular reason why that function is starting all over again. So um okay, we want to replay play game if replay is true. So we want to play game. Let's write return. Aha. So return play game if this is true. Now at some point too, in the end, we want to check this again. We want to do this again. Like, and this part we don't really need to say return because it's the end of the function. So we say const replay equal to play again. Play again returns a confirm, which will return true or false. So if the person press true, if the person presses OK, which returns true, it will play again. And if the person does not, let's add an else. Can you see that this one does not have curly braces? This is because, okay, let me look for that alert. Okay, the reason, what was I saying? Can someone remind me? The reason it does not have curly braces, yeah, that's what I was saying. The reason it does not have curly braces is because it's a one line code. After um the condition, the action is just a one liner, just a one line code. So if we run this now, there might be a few errors and then we'll solve it along the way. Okay, so it starts with what is your name? Can you say at the beginning I called this play game function? That's the only way we can set the game in motion. And other functions we are calling inside here. Okay, what's your name? Henry. Rock paper scissors rock. Computer chose rock, Henry chose rock, etc. And that works perfectly fine. It's asking if I want to play again. I'll say okay. Then it started again by running play game. Now let's try a few things. Let's say not I'm not entering my name. Let's see what it will say my name is. Let's say I'll enter rock here. And then it says computer chose paper, player chose rock. That means as far as I don't enter my name, I still have a default name. Now let's enter a correct name, which is Henry. But then let's enter Spock. You must have heard of rock paper scissors lizard Spock. You did not enter a valid answer. Then would you like to play again? Can you see this is really nice? It's after I didn't enter a correct choice, it asked if I wanted to play again. And then if I press OK, it's going to restart from the very beginning by calling this function. Now, is there anyone that does not understand what I have been doing so far so that we can move on to the next step, which is recording scores?
If you have any question, please unmute your mic and ask. Being quiet means you understand every single thing that have been said and you can do what was done so far. So please, if you have any question, you can ask. If you are not following at all, speak up. Let's see if we can help you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to assume that silence means understanding. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is add scores. And then this is where objects come in. This is where objects come in. And arrays. Mhm. Someone said they've not been attending classes. That's why they don't understand. Um, is it that you don't understand everything or just a few parts you do not understand? Do you understand how the logic works?
Okay,
Okay, I'll
I
just move on.
I get some points, right? But those constant function and all of that, I really don't know how they work, but I'll check the videos out.
All right, please. We have 6 lessons now. At most, it will take you, I don't know, 4 days. If you are watching maybe one lesson and a little bit more per day, it will take you too much time. Okay, so yeah, I want to define an array. An object counts scores equal to an object. Then we say user 0, computer 0. This is an object. Now, next thing we want to do is check. Oh, we need ties too. Ties 0. Now we'll go to whenever we get the result and we see that someone has won. Remember, we are no longer reloading the page on every play, because as we were playing a game before and we were reloading the page, this would actually affect the score. When you reload, the score will disappear. I don't know if I can teach you one specific thing today about saving it, about saving the scores, or I could just give it as an assignment. So when it is a tie, all we want to do here is check the result, check the scores. Sorry, just add something to the score. Um, scores dot types plus equal to 1. That's it. Then if player wins, we'll do, okay. We can say plus plus instead. Just plus plus. That should work. This is the same thing as saying, let me bring it down. Plus equal to 1. That means we're adding 1 to it. It's also the same thing as saying scores dot ties equal to scores dot ties plus 1. So all these three are the same ways of saying the exact same thing. I have doubts about this particular line though, but let's check it out. Let's check it out. Okay, well, it says the call will end in 15 minutes. All right, we should be done by then. Now we want to check when the player wins. What do we do next? Let's add the okay. Let's add the score above. So we're going to say scores dot player. Okay, that's user plus plus. And then the last one, the computer went to scores dot computer plus plus. Good. Now, in the result, there are a few things we would want to add. Okay. At the bottom, we're going to say const scores display equal to. Now we want to use concatenation here. So if you don't understand concatenation very well, please listen very carefully. So I'm going to say user. Oh no, let's use the username, which is username. Okay, that was pretty easy. Username scores dot user. We have to use scores dot user. We're doing that because those are values, not a string or anything. So the next one we want to say is computer. That's a string. We just type it there without using the dollar sign or the curly braces. So yeah, we add the computer scores. So scores dot computer. And then the last one, we add the number of ties, which is scores dot ties. Then we just add it to it. Result plus equals scores display. As simple as that. Now let's play again. What's your name, Henry? What could also subscribe? Okay. I don't know where that issue is coming from, but let's try again. Well, okay, so there's an issue. It says play again is not defined. If I can see that right. This player is not defined. Okay, let's look for where player is. It's username, not player. We're adding the username of the player. Okay, that's a mistake from my part from the previous lesson. What's name? Henry. Rock, paper, scissors, rock. So it says computer chose scissors, Henry chose rock, Henry wins. Henry won, computer 0, dice 0. Can we see this part that Henry wins and Henry won is joining together? That's because at the end of this, there is no line. But instead of adding the line at the end of this, because then we'll have to add it at the end of here and at the end of here, like at the end of all three results. We will just add it at the beginning of this one. So then we will check it again. Would you like to play again? Absolutely. And name Henry. Rock, paper, or scissors. Paper. Good. Oh, why is it showing that line again? We already added a line break. Henry one, computer one. Okay, let's do it again. Henry. Rock, paper, or scissors. Scissors. Henry wins. Henry 2, computer 1, ties 0. I don't know why this line break I put is not working. Because before the scores display, it's supposed to add a new line. So let me reload. Okay, name Henry paper. Aha, I think it was just an issue with the web page. So sometimes you just have to reload when you have an error. So computer chose scissors, Henry chose paper, computer wins, Henry 0, computer 1, ties 0. If you play again, Henry paper, Henry 1, computer 1, ties 0. So this is how we can record scores in in a game. Now, another thing I wanted to optimize in this game is how we choose the player's choice. Now, reason I said that is because we're using an entire if statement. Okay, give me a moment. Okay, how we determine the computer choice? That's what I meant. We're using an entire if statement for this. Now, let's const RPS array equal to, so we will have rock. We're going to use something called indexing, something that I provided in our previous lesson, something that you do inside of arrays. If you remember, this array is at position 0. This element of the array is at position 0, position 1, position 2. Now, to determine what this computer has chosen, we only need three numbers, which is 0, 1, and 2, not 1 to 3 anymore. So at line here, we get the number between 1 and 2. Sorry, 0 and 2. So I'm going to remove plus 1, 0 and 2. All right, so we're going to use RPS array and then use, sorry about that, RPS array, and then use those square brackets and then put the random number inside of it. This random number will be either 0, 1, or 2. Let's copy this and paste it in the console a few times and see what will happen. We just have to be sure of what we are doing here. Let's press cancel. Okay. Okay. It keeps returning 1. Let's see. It always returns 1. Let's see the issue.
I think the last one returns 0.
Oh, that's true. It returns 0. Let's see again. I want to see if it returns a 2. Okay, it's only returning 0 and 1. So let's see what happens when we add a 1 to it. Yes, we are supposed to add a 1. The other one said 3, and it said a, okay, let's see. This should return 2. Yes. 1, 2. I'm waiting for 0. But now it is not returning a 0. So we're just going to add 3. 0, 1, and 2. Yes. I remember clearly now. So I'm just going to multiply by 3 and not add anything in there. Before, when we were multiplying by 3, we knew it would only give us between 0 and 2. That's why we were adding a 1. I don't know if that was clear. This would only generate between 0 and 2. Previously, we were adding 1 because we don't want a 0. We want 1 and 3. So if we add 1 to this floor value, which is 0, that would be 1. If we add 1 to this ceiling value, which is 2, that would be 3. Which means previously it would generate between 1 and 3. But now it is generating between 0 and 2. You just have to do the calculations properly and test it before continuing. Now, this particular part, it works the same, except now it is using a cleaner approach. It just chooses one of these three, 0, 1, or 2, and then to just pick that value. So let's try playing. Henry, rock, paper, or scissors, rock. It works very fine, no issues. Henry, oh god, rock, and it is still working the same. So that's pretty much it. Now, for the last part, would you want me to show you how to save this course and make it persist even after reload? Or should we do that? Should I send that as a video or should we do it in another class?
You know the time is going to end very soon because
Okay.
of the 1 hour limit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, okay, I guess I would have to send it as a video. Our next class will be on the document object model. It will get very, very interesting in the next class. And there is a project we are supposed to carry out, but because of time, we could not. There is a quiz web page we were supposed to do, but maybe after the DOM we can do that. So you can try to go and learn this later. DOM, Doc- Document Object Model. There are different ways of using it, and I will come and teach a typical example in our next class, which should be Monday, I think. All right. Um, See you in the next class. You can take over Nelson from me. Let me end the call. Or if anyone has a question, you can ask now. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
I have a question now.
All
What
right,
if
please go ahead.
you
You,
what if
do you need
can you
my
hear me?
screen? I can hear you.
Okay, I after you have for instance I want to play like 5 times. Then after that
Okay.
5 times you end the game. Then how do you generate
Okay.
the winner? For instance, you win two, computer wins two, and then it's a draw. That kind of thing. Then there will be a
Okay.
final score. Yes, like a summation of scores
Well, that's why
between you
we
and the
have.
computer.
Okay, so you want something like choosing the number of rounds, and then after choosing the number of rounds, they finish playing, and then we declare a total winner. We determine the winner by checking the one that has a higher score. And if they have 2-2, you have to declare it a tie. And you can tell them to play again if they want to. So do you think you can implement? Okay, yeah, I just found a way for an assignment for you guys. So the assignment is to I'll send explicit information like I usually send it previous like steps that you can use. What you have to do is add this function you just mentioned to it. Add a fixed number of rounds, maybe 5 rounds, or ask them to enter the number of rounds if you want to. So they should enter a number of rounds or add a fixed number of rounds, like five. It should be odd numbered. That's easier. So if you add an, a particular number of a particular number of rounds, sorry, you keep you keep deducting that value, like rounds remaining or something. You keep deducting. You write minus minus instead of plus plus in this case. So I'm already giving you ideas like const rounds equal to 5. After every successful play, before you send the alert at the bottom here, you are going to deduct from it. You're going to write something like round minus minus. Then they will keep playing again. The user would have to say if they want to continue. And then by the end, somewhere here, after you have sent the alert, I mean before you send the alert, you check if the rounds is now equal to 0. Rounds is now equal to 0, which means we have used 5 rounds, we have deducted 5 times. At that point, if it is equal to 0, you declare you add a logic to check who has a higher score. That's if computer score is greater than player score, computer wins. If player score is greater than